made it.
We actually made it! Welcome back to the Boss Fight 3D Community Challenge. In our first video where we established a concept, I left myself with only 7 days to complete Punisher's latest challenge, where we have to render some David and Goliath type scenario. It has been an absolutely wild week. Of course, the finished render will be at the end of the video. Let's get into the boss fight. Alright, let's go. I downloaded the project files, which starts us up with this scene here. We've got the boss, hero, and most importantly this ring, which represents the area of interest, which is where we want to keep the action centered. Like with any of the other challenges, we don't touch the camera angle at all, although we were able to choose between 3 templates this time, a close, medium, and far shot. For the sake of this render, I'm going with a close shot. Then I imported Markham 3D's Greeble kit, which is shown here and linked in the description. It's the same pack I used in the last challenge for kit bashing, and that's exactly what we'll be doing today. So, what are we actually making? Last time, in a nutshell, we came to the idea of a little robot guy fighting a giant computer screen spider tank with the blue screen of death on it. I've been referring to him as the Tech Giant. To make this, we'll be using this mech model from a control rig sample pack and kit bashing on top of it to make our own model. We'll also be throwing in quite a few assets from the Matrix Demo's Apartment Tech Props pack. In the name of speed, I was using a lot of the packs I was most comfortable and familiar with. Alright, so let's roll. I'd gathered all my resources. It was time to build the boss. First of all, I identified which material applied to what by using multicolored translucent materials. This was purely for organizational purposes. In the end, the whole model will be set to invisible. I also dropped in a giant computer monitor in the middle here to get a feel for the final shape of the boss right off the bat. I then hid the cannon part that we won't be using at all, and I was able to focus then on designing the legs and chassis of this thing. So the head itself is comprised of a monitor and 2 computer tower models back to back. These are all from the Apartment Tech pack. And from there, I was able to start building the legs, using the various parts to find good shapes that fit together nicely. It's nice working on this character because once we finished one leg, we've effectively finished all 4. I add some more detail bits to the side of the model, experimenting with shapes to make it all feel like one cohesive robot. Then we can hop over and use Unreal Engine's built-in modeling tools for any specific shapes we need. In this case, it was a hollowed-out cylinder. Another important ingredient on day 2 was figuring out how I was going to display the blue screen of death. Initially, I was just going to put the image on a plane, but this looked really bad. And after a lot of things really not working, I found the best thing to do was replace the emissive texture of the computer screen model with my own adjusted in Photoshop to display the blue screen. Because we're modifying the emissive channel, the computer actually glows with the screen and plays correctly with the light. This pays off down the road when lighting the final render. So day 2 was rounded off by adding to the ankle of the Tech Giant, this time using some of Adrian Rutkowski's 3D kits, and with that we are going to arrive at... So I started off day 3 by finishing up the leg. Up until this point, I hadn't really established what the environment of the scene was going to be, which is pretty important, but while working on the legs off camera, I had the idea. As opposed to the Tech Giant being giant, we'd have it be a regular-sized computer and the whole render would take place on the surface of a desk. As you can see, I placed down a giant mug and keyboard in the test level to visualize this, and at this point I really felt like we were onto something. Things were looking good, so it was time to apply some Megascans materials. I was mainly trying to match the colors of the monitor textures. Due to the time constraints, I couldn't really break down each model and apply custom materials of my own, so we're making do and mixing and matching the Quixel assets. Once one leg was textured, I copied it around the spider, and we'll jump over to me live the moment I finished it, before we move on to actually applying this model to the rig. It's a spider tank! I think these legs turned out pretty dang cool. And so you can imagine how this segment will be combined down into a single model, and then attached to this guy here can be attached there. But since this is all in pieces, we can combine it and use it for our animation. Guys, look at this. Dude. Okay, so with the legs done, I started combining meshes to attach to the control rig skeleton. This process is really tedious and time-consuming, but seeing it slowly come to life as I add each part is pretty exciting. I wasn't sure if any of this was going to work going into it, so it was a huge relief to see it coming together and not breaking completely. So I rounded off day 3 manually attaching the parts, finishing off 2 of the 4 legs. This is where we're picking up next on. Okay, day 4. Off camera, I completed the base of the robot and got the back legs all rigged up. Along with the actual headpiece, at this point I'd gotten the process down to a science. It went a lot faster than the previous day. So skipping past a bunch of tedious part placement and kit bashing, after another hour and a half went by, we'd actually arrived at a completed tech giant model. So at this point it was looking good, like things were really working out and that we just might make it on time. But with only 3 days left now to animate him, design and animate our hero character, and build the actual scene, I was plenty inspired to keep on trucking. So we're straight into designing our hero character. This guy was done in the exact same way as the tech giant, this time going for a more humanoid design. We took the default Unreal Engine skeleton, made it translucent, and got back to looking for shapes to design a character that feels like it fits in with the boss. We'll move quickly here. Here's how our character came together. Alright, here it is. I think it turned out pretty nice, and most importantly, it fits in with the style of the big guy. Having a concept art sheet really helped in this part of the process. There were lots of small decisions to find the final form of the character, and the reference was great for finding the most important shapes. You'll notice in those shots he was missing some hands. I made those separately after planning out these basic shapes here. I didn't want to have to worry about hand posing or having to model individual knuckles, so I went for this more basic, almost mitten shape instead. In the end, I think it turns out pretty effective. I just manually pose it before combining the meshes together to look like a closed fist. So after posing the hand, I positioned a wrench in it, which I thought would be funny considering the new miniature direction, and that would show how the little guy's going to fix the computer. With all of that, we have a giant mess in our test level and 2 perfectly usable characters. All that's left before jumping into the main scene is figuring out the animation for our hero character. As per usual, we're using Cascadeur for our character animations today. And hey, if you want to get 15% off Cascadeur Pro, I happen to have a link in the description. Use code 1WQHB8 to receive a discount and support the channel. But anyways, it was pretty simple to get the Unreal Engine mannequin rig ported over into the program, which is what we'll be using to animate. Initially I was going to animate something from scratch, but it was looking like garbage, so instead I started with a Mixamo animation of a character unsheathing an axe, and used Cascadeur to tweak the timing to better fit the animation. Just like we did for that boss, I made a blueprint of our character and applied all of the parts separately to different sockets. This turned out more complicated than the boss itself, so it was very exciting to see work finally. Track animation, let's get that. Oh, how does it look? Guys? Yes! Woo! Alright, so with the deadline closing quickly in, we should probably switch over to some scene design. Making the setting for the render itself was a lot faster. Considering this is a more character-oriented challenge, obviously it's the characters that are going to get the attention and focus. I technically started this work the night before, but for the flow of the video, we're saying this started on day 5. So initially I started placing some of the props down, like the keyboard and the mouse, just to get a feel for the scale. I'm trying to place these elements in a way that both looks natural, is compositionally pleasing, and guides the eye towards the center and doesn't pull any focus away from the action of the shot. Now I get rid of the ground plane and start trying to place in a table at a good scale. I've used this asset pack in quite a few projects to dress tables like this, so it was actually a pretty smooth and easy process. Except for this chair here. For some reason I could not find a good spot for it in the composition for quite a while. Little nitpick details like sticky notes though, that's what really sells the scene to me. And while making a lot of creative decisions as for the composition is a little bit stressful, I think this is the most fun part of the process, because this is where the whole thing really comes to life. And plus it felt like I was working with miniatures the whole time, which is cool. Now I'm switching my focus over to the background and the lighting, which I had to experiment with quite a lot before I landed with something I was really wanting to move forward with. When it comes to the lighting, I was trying to get away from that basic, recognizable Unreal Engine look and have some bold shadows without drowning out the image and hiding all the detail work we've done. I did quite a bit of experimenting with this, ultimately landing at a pretty dramatic effect with a really strong, contrasting rectangular light as a complement. You can see that sort of coming together here. Last detail on day 5 was adding in this desk lamp that's going to light our hero and closing off the walls. And so with that, there's day 6. Okay, the deadline's almost here and the render is almost done. Okay, as you can see, I throw in the blueprint of the main character and position it over the template. Then I add in and attach the hands to this blueprint and attach the wrench to the hand. Taking all of this now over into Sequencer, I can track in the unsheath animation. So I cut off the beginning of the animation so it starts the point where the character has already grabbed the wrench, and then I split the animation a few frames in so that the latter part can be stretched out to slow motion and fit the whole animation. I'm not really sure if that makes sense, but anyways, I also added in and attached a blue rectangular light to the face of the tech giant so it more clearly glowed, and then threw in a lamp in the background to better highlight the characters. I do end up keeping it, but I could not decide on that lamp for quite a while, turning it on and off. You'll also notice I added in some curtains off camera, and I think those really pulled the background together. So at this point, all that was left to do was animate the tech giant himself, which is super easy to do thanks to Control Rig and Unreal Engine's animation mode. Animating the boss, funnily enough, was one of the easiest parts of the process. It comes with a baked deploy animation for the legs, so all I had to do was keyframe position the central mass to move upwards and rotate a bit. What you're seeing here are indeed the final steps of the render. Ending day 6, I ran the thing through Movie Render Queue, and on day 7, I could rest. I submitted just about 12 hours before the deadline, so there's nothing left to do now but roll out the final render. Here is the culmination of the boss fight. There it is, there you have it. Not bad for a 1-week render, I'd say. This is definitely the most excited I've been about the results of a render challenge so far. At the last second, I nearly disqualified myself by submitting a render at 1920 by 1080 as opposed to the required 1920 by 810. But thank goodness I caught it at the last second and got the thing in on time. I really hope you guys enjoyed this full challenge video. This whole process really meant a lot to me, and I'm absolutely elated to have made it from concept to finished piece. So thank you all for watching. Let me know what you guys think of the final render. That's really all I've got, so I hope this video has been of inspiration, and I'll see you all in the next one.